Okay, this is the last video, and then I'm going out. Um, Still stuffed, but I'm gonna go out and play pool. Okay, the last bit of questions in our required homework have to do with creating the financial statements. This question, I'm looking at question 7 now, and it's asking me, or it's telling me, I should say, use the following information for the quick studies below. On December 31st, Hawkins' record shows the following accounts. We have all sorts of different types of accounts: cash, accounts receivable, supplies, etc. And it's asking us to create an income statement. Okay, and so if you recall, the income statement is just the difference between revenue and expenses. So we would have to go through these data and identify which one of these accounts belongs on the income statement versus which ones do not. And this is where I was saying, I think in the lecture, that it's super helpful to memorize this stuff here in the beginning. For instance, we would memorize cash as an asset and it belongs on the balance sheet. I would just make flashcards. Accounts receivable, that is an asset. It belongs on the balance sheet. Supplies, asset, balance sheet. Equipment, asset, balance sheet. Accounts payable, that would be a liability, and it would also be on the balance sheet. Common stock would be equity, and that would be on the balance sheet. And then I think by the time I get down to service revenue, that is an equity. However, it belongs on the income statement. That is the totality of all the money that we've earned or made as a result of selling our products and services. And then I would include the three expenses. And then the difference between revenue and total expenses would be net income. Question 8. Question 8 is same data. And now if you remember, the first financial statement that we create would be net income. The second financial statement is statement of retained earnings. And the reason that I want to create the statement of retained earnings second is because an input into this financial statement is net income, right? I think we were saying retained earnings has a beginning balance. That's what the December 1st amount would be. Then we would add net income or net loss, depending on what we're looking at. And this one, I think there was net income, and that's derived from the previous question. And then we would subtract dividends. Bear with me while I learn how to use this file. Less dividends. And the difference between the beginning balance plus our net income minus our dividends would be the ending balance. So I would pull net income from the income statement from the previous question, and then I would look into this list and see if there were any dividends, and here they are. Dividends are an equity, and they belong in the statement of retained earnings, and they have the effect of lowering our equity. And then I would just total everything up. Next question looks like it's asking, hey, for the balance sheet. So again, I would go through these accounts and identify all of the assets. And again, this is where having these accounts memorized would be helpful. Then I would identify all the liabilities. And in this particular problem, it looks like there's really only one liability. And then I would identify the two categories of the two categories of equity. That would be capital and common stock would be one category. And then the second one would be, bear with me, the second category is not total equity. So I need to learn how to, here we go. The second category is retained earnings. And the reason I calculate the statement of retained earnings separately is because the balance sheet, I would definitely take notes on this. The balance sheet uses ending retained earnings, right? So I need to create the statement of retained earnings that we did in the previous question so that I could include retained earnings here in a balance sheet. Everything else is coming straight from our data table. These next questions, it looks like the same basic structure. Now they're not giving us any hints on the income statement. So again, we would have to go back, recall that there's two sections. Revenue is the top section, expenses are the bottom section. And then we'd have to go through these data and identify again which one are revenues and which one are expenses and which ones shouldn't be included. Last question 11. Again, it's the statement of retained earnings, and they're giving us a little bit less information from the previous question, but it's still the same basic concepts. Beginning balance plus net income minus dividends leaves us with our ending balance. And we would go get all of that data here. And again, we would pull net income from the previous question that we derived on the income statement. And then finally, again, the balance sheet. Assets would be in this section, liabilities would be in this section, and equity would be in this section. When I get to the equity sections, I have two types of equity, common stock and retained earnings. Common stock come from this data, and then the retained earnings would come from the statement of retained earnings. Okay.